Hey everybody, and welcome back. Today I'm doing just a simple tie repaint, nothing really major. I've been wanting to do a black tie for a while, sort of a black squadron kind of deal, and I've already gotten started, as you can see here. The other thing is I wanted to test out my stencils, and I hadn't done a tie stencil before. I kind of wanted to see how they worked on that irregular surface. And so I'm actually reusing the stencil that I did on the one panel because it can be reused. And as you can see, I've cut a little channel into the decal. I was going to call it a decal. Into the stencil because I wanted to be able to fold over that detail. And that's what I ended up having to do on the other side. So as you can see, as I try to get it in place, I'm going to fold it over so that more of the surface area can adhere properly. But first, before I do that, I'm going to need to spray the color that I want the logo to be. And in this case, that's going to be Vallejo Game Air Stonewall Gray. Stonewall gray is a good sort of really light gray if you don't want to go all the way to white. I like to avoid white if at all possible, just because I always feel like it's a little bit too stark. But in this case, I did end up highlighting it with a little white before things got finished. And I don't know that I actually show that later on. Now, obviously, I like to apply my colors on my repaints with an airbrush if at all possible. And in this case, I'm painting the whole panel the light gray, even though really I only need a portion of it to be light gray. And the reason I cover the whole panel is so that when I am going back over it with the black, I don't get a color variation between where the light gray is and where the old black was. And I found a little bits of schmutz in the paint, so I was just cleaning that up with the knife. Okay, so now it's time to apply the stencil, which again got sliced not all the way through early on, but see how it's going to sit over that kind of middle support, just like in this side. Well, that's what I wanted to be able to bend over, and that's why that slices there, if I can just get it into place. It's not going to seat completely flush. This isn't a decal after all, so it's just important to get it down as much as possible, and then the rest of the work will come from applying the paint straight down over the top of it so that a minimum amount of paint kind of slides underneath. And I'm going to be using Vallejo Model Air Panzer Gray. And to be honest, if I had it to do all over again, I'd probably use a little bit lighter gray than that. Panzer Gray is super dark. In fact, it's almost black. It's very close to being black. And although I am doing black, I wanted to have a lighter color to start with that I could then wash down to be closer to black, but then provide the variations of color that's going to give the ship the depth that you want when it's all said and done. Now again, I'll be using the airbrush to apply this, but it's not necessary. You can use a brush to apply paint over the stencil. You could use a sponge. Actually, a sponge probably isn't a bad idea because you're going to be dabbing straight down over the top of the stencil. Whereas a brush, you're going to run the risk of having too much paint and having that collect underneath the stencil. But, if you're careful, you can use a brush. Airbrush, always my preferred method for something like this. Then, voila, there it is. Now, of course, with that done, I'm going to go ahead and add by brush more of the Panzer gray over the details that I didn't want the logo on. You could leave it or not as you want to do, but in my case, I wanted to have those support ribs stand out, or not stand out, as the case may be. So with both of the wings done now, it's time to go ahead and just coat the rest of the model with that same Vallejo Panzer Gray. So I think it was at this point that I realized that the gray needed to be a little lighter. I at least needed to have some lighter highlights. So I grabbed the Watercolors Cool Gray 2 and just started adding a little bit lighter gray highlights to some of the leading edges. Highlighting the ribs on that panel is kind of tough because the supports sit higher, and so it's tough to get the brush down there where you want it to be. So once the highlights are in, I can go ahead and just cover the whole thing with a generous helping of Nuln oil. everything except the logo, of course. But because of the way that the logo gets separated off from the rest of the panel, or panels, I should say, it's pretty easy to keep it off of there. And you can even go in and do a little Nuln oiling up next to the logo without risking too much. Just got to be a little careful. All right, so now the whole thing is essentially black. As you can see, there is a depth to the color. It's not just solid black. There is lighter black and darker black, thanks to the grays and the Nuln oil. And that's really, you really want to be striving for that. You don't want it to just be a flat color, and black can be tough sometimes because it really wants to just be black. So now I'm just going to go back in with that Watercolors Gray and pick out some of the little highlights, just so that you can break up the surface and have it not be so flat overall, and give it a some more visual interest, I guess is the best way to put that. So that's going to be little raised details, some edge highlighting, definitely in the corners of the panels, things like that. Don't think I showed on camera, but I will also go over and do the area around the canopy glass, that the support for the canopy will also end up being that gray. And again, that was sort of a last minute decision because I wanted the contrast between the canopy color, which we're going to get to shortly. So speaking of canopy glass, I'm going to be using these 3, and later on actually 4, red colors from Watercolors. This is their red 5, 4, and 3. That's their 3 darkest colors. Later on I go in and decide I want it just to go a little bit higher, a little bit brighter, and I add number 2 as well. I actually have a series of 5 red colors. And I'm going to go dark to light, starting with 5 over the whole thing, 4 over less of it, 3 over even less, and in each case bringing the color closer and closer, essentially closer and closer to the camera as we get to lighter colors. Hey, and that's it. It's all done. This is the final look of the model. And as you know, as I mentioned earlier, there are things I would have done differently, but I'm still happy with the final outcome. I think it turned out pretty well. And, you know, it didn't take that long. You know, if you wanted to do a black one yourself, as you can imagine, not a lot of color needs to go into it, so not a lot of color changes and not a lot of excessive work to do to get it done. I'm probably going to do more in this series. I do want to experiment more with my stencils and trying different sizes and different positions. I think this is an interesting placement. It's not necessarily ideal. I kind of wished I'd had a larger one on hand, but I was too lazy to go cut a new one. So it is what it is. But that's going to do it for today. Thank you so much for watching. And if you like this video, please like this video. And if you want to see more of these kinds of videos in the future, then you're definitely going to want to subscribe. And that's going to do it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you later.